Mrs. Gaydosh?
Thank you. I'm Sally Gaydosh, 9250 Liberty Road. I have several questions regarding the procedure that's followed. It's affirmation, I guess, of what I'm looking for. Well, first of all, I wonder if the application is available, the application by the applicant.
Mr. Maestros, is the application available by the applicant? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know either. I mean, well, I believe that this request came in directly out of the building department through Mr. Finch's office, and Mr. Finch made the request to Planning Commission on behalf of the property owner, I should say.
Because I'm taking the form, the applicant, the required applicant, as the owner of the following property, the name, present zoning class, and proposed zoning class. And the vicinity of the map, is there a map available for the area? You know, it says, or it requires, I guess, that the map and the, all the information is available and the application is available at the clerk's office.
Yes, the map, if I'm sorry, the map and the property in question has been available in the clerk's office, yes.
Okay. Okay, then, let me just go through a couple of things that I need some affirmation on. So the application is available, but I think if we read the application, we'll find that section of the zoning code 1201 applies here.
It's 1201.
Yes. I guess there's been some controversy, Mr. Maestros, about what 1201 really requires, and I just want to know that I know that the application here refers to the codified ordinance 1201 as requirement. And hopefully that's why we're having a public hearing. If council passes this, vote of the electorate, which 1201 requires.
It's part of the ordinance. It's in the legislation. If you look at that, it will go on the ballot if council approves it.
Okay. Because I guess there's been some question about the authority of 1201, and I just want to make sure that this seems to be the authority.
This is also charter. I mean, the charter also parrots that, which provides it. The Planning Commission reviewed it in November. It's been sent to council, and council's read it 3 times.
I think the reason that I'm bringing this up is there has been controversy, if you remember, over the years, that 1201 requires this. No, it doesn't require that. But according to this, it does require a public hearing and 7A1. That's my answer. Okay. Just to recap of what I understand it's to do. Now, they say the current map is available. Is that the current map on the wall there?
I don't believe that that one actually is, but the exhibits are attached. If you go on your iPad, all the application, the request, the maps, they're all attached to your legislation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Now, I understand, and the reason I'm bringing the map into play, and I'll just get quick to the point, okay? So you don't have a lot of delay here. According to our current map, as I see it, and the latest map I can get a hold of is dated, I believe, 2012. But in the area of C5 district is what we're talking about. There have been 66 amendments to the code, and I don't think we voted on 66 parcels. I don't believe we have. There have been, originally there was 40 old C5s on the old map. And what I want to go back to is, the reason I think this is important is because it appears that we're using a map with 66 amendments that was never subjected to the vote of the people by this procedure that you're using tonight, which is a public hearing and vote. And I recognize that the C5 district, just in my history, I'm going to share it with you. The C5 district was recommended by the Planning Commission in 2007. And they outlined the area, which is this. outlined, and it was prepared by Planning Commission January 25th, 2007. It was approved on April the 23rd, 2007. And the map of May 18th, 2007 has all of this land rezoned C5. This is all old C5. This is all new, 60 parcels. I can't find an ordinance, I can't find a ballot, and I can't find anything in Walter Grain report that identifies these parcels being rezoned by ordinance, public hearing, or now, all I'm asking is, does somebody have some information that I can't get hold of? And this is the procedure, as I see it, that's followed in 2012 and 13, when we rezone land. These are the procedures that are followed. The ordinance, this is from the Board of Elections. The ordinance, the parcel number, the address is all listed.
In the ballot language, is that a ballot that you have?
Well, this is from the Board of Elections. This is where, yeah, these are the ballot issues.
Okay.
Can't find a ballot issue for these 66 parcels. And as I said, the Walter Grain report is missing those 66. The certified, codified ordinances certified by Walter Grain.
See, I've been here a long time. Can you educate me on Walter Grain, is it? I'm not familiar with that term.
They do. Codified
Oh,
ordinances.
excuse me, my fault, my apologies. I thought you were talking specifically about some sort of standard.
No.
That's the company, that's who.
The
who
publication
ordered-
of all the codified ordinances
My
and the
my mistake.
And
You look at
the way it
published record,
reads,
I
it
thought
talks about the
standard.
boundary changes according to ordinance. And, can't find it there either. That's what I'm here to find out. You know, if you have any information.
Well, Mrs. Gaydosh, I don't have any information relating to those topics, so I'm going to refer to my law director. And if we don't have those answers, we'll
Just, well, if you can get them, I
understand.
can share with you what I have.
Okay.
Reinvent the wheel, you can, I think you should probably
Okay.
have. Okay, so I just want to point that out, that before we can do any rezonings, we're gonna make sure the map is correct, because that's what you're basing your rezoning on, correct?
Okay. Is there anybody else who'd like to speak in regards to ordinance 126, 2000? Sure.
Sengstock, 2704 Harbor Glen Drive, apartment 105, here in Twinsburg, Ohio. I've done some research also on this because the comprehensive plan has been a key issue and topic here in town for the last year or so during its update. And as I understand, this property is on C5, probably was done back in 1989. It's one of the original C5 parcels. It was done when the base map was initially voted on by the people. The other areas, this is Gaydosh, is looking into. I also don't find that on your maps. This property's been zoned C5, and in the comprehensive plan it's listed as a transitional piece of property. I was a zoning inspector years ago, more than I want to talk about, but I do understand the concept of transitional zoning. And the intrusion of a C3 zoning classification into the C5 mixed-use district, in my opinion, is not warranted. The property owner must be aware, I'm sure, of the term caveat emptor. Simply means let the buyer beware when they purchase this property. Therefore, City Council, in my opinion, should reject this rezoning application if there's to be any validity to the recently updated comprehensive plan, which clearly shows that as a C5 mixed-use district. Everybody in this room that I know of for the last year and a half, that's all I've heard about is how we're going to have our comprehensive plan and downtown developments And now we're going to intrude the C3 district into a C5 district and bring that commercial corridor right down. And not only that, but also move it behind a residential area. The residentially zoned property directly east of that, was a gentleman spoke in favor of it, but he has his issues with it. When the traffic noise and headlights, additional intrusions into their property and the quietness of their area that they've grown to love in their community is going to be an issue, then you'll probably hear a different story. It could possibly lead to valuation issues if the comprehensive plan is simply abandoned for any property owner to simply make a quick dollar on the sale of their property. I'm at a loss in reading all of the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting to hear our Economic Development Director talk about this is primarily for the sale of a piece of property. The property owner never even showed up at the Planning Commission meeting. Plus it was represented by our Director of Economic Development and Planning for our community. The property owner never made any comments about that. The property owner does not wish to present his case for rezoning. City Council should reject this request. In my opinion, it verges on unethical for our Director of Economic Development to represent a property owner who clearly is doing this to make money on the sale of his property. If he's got somebody who wants to buy it and wants to have it rezoned, then they can give him an offer contingent to the rezoning process being taken place. I really do believe people in this position should, number one, get their own independent counsel. Our city pays substantial salary and benefits for this Director of Planning and Development, and it should represent the city, in my opinion. I understand they can talk about planning, zoning, comprehensive plans, but should no way represent specific property owners. That's their obligation as a property owner. The application for rezoning was not accompanied by any deposit of funds to defray the city's cost in this matter. It was absorbed by the city. That's on the application, which I do have a copy of this evening, because I did a records request on it. Since the city does not own or have any interest in this property, to my knowledge, you authorized the waiving of these fees. The council ought to find that out. It verges on the abuse of power. Who in this community has the right to waive fees? Can we get parking tickets waived the same way, or, who waives these things? And if you're going to waive it just because somebody on a particular piece of property that bought it using it for business wants to rezone it, at the very least, if you're going to do that, go back 5 or 10 years and find out who else may have paid for these rezoning application fees and refund it to them. At least they may not feel like they were discriminated against. Since this rezoning application was not unanimously recommended by the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission minutes clearly shows this rezoning appears to be either politically motivated or purely for the profitability and the sale of the property, City Council must reject this request or admit to the city that the city of Twinsburg's integrity in planning is for sale, controlled by politics and not our comprehensive plan. If you're going to do that, then your comprehensive plan, I understand, is a plan, it's subject to change. This is a major issue if you're going to have any integrity in what I've heard the community wants to do in downtown development. Allowing people just to push C3 districts in from all directions. And if you're going to allow this property rezoned C3 and no longer be the transitional property to C5, you're just pushing that off onto the next property owner. And that next property owner is going to be entitled to come in and say, I want mine rezoned C3 too. I would do the same thing. I would like to also verify that the public hearing this evening was advertised and that adjacent property owners were notified of the public hearing. I think somebody ought to verify that. How will City Council deny the next request for rezoning to C3 on this corridor? Best ask yourself that question, because proper planning and discrimination do not go well together. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a point of order.
Sure, Mr. Councilman. Councilor, excuse me.
I don't want to disagree with anything that's been said there. That's his opinion. Look, we moved here 12 years ago. We built a house next to McDonald's. We have a house that's next to a daycare center. This property has been commercially used next to our property to the south. And we've had no problems. We don't have any problems with McDonald's. We aren't gonna have any problems with the daycare center, and we aren't gonna have any problems with what can be developed on this property. The fact of the matter is that your ordinances, as they stand right now, provide protection between commercial and residential zones. And these aren't namby-pamby protections. For example, lighting on any commercial property has to be limited to the lighting on that property. It can't go over the border, it doesn't on ours. Second, no commercial dumpster, no commercial disposal can be within 50 feet of any residential property next to a commercial zone. Third, there are mounting and screening and fencing and wall requirements in the ordinances as they exist right now. Between residential and commercial zones, fences 8 feet high, in some cases mounting 4 feet high, up to 12. We know what we're doing where we're living. We knew what we were doing when we bought the property. And we're confident from what we've seen in the past 12 years that whether it's the city or the adjoining landowners, they're going to do the right thing being next to a residential property. So I think that some of the concerns that were expressed might look good in generalities. I'm dealing with specifics. I live with it every day. And I know what I see, I know what I experience, and it's been a damn good experience. Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to speak on this topic? Mr. Maestros?
Just if I could maybe try to clarify some of the issues that were raised. First of all, the comment was made that this property's been zoned C5 since 1989. I don't think that's accurate. We haven't had C5 in the city since 1989. And I think we'll have to look at this, but Mrs. Gaydosh made mention of 60 some odd properties that were rezoned at a period of time. My guess is, and I'll confirm this, is that when the city adopted the C5 zoning designation, and I want to say it's been within the last 5 to 7 years that the C5 was established. That was established and was established with a certain downtown district, which covered, my guess is, these same 67 properties. Is probably the number of properties that were covered by that. But prior to that, we didn't have the mixed use designation. It was a new mixed use designation that was adopted by or recommended by the Planning Commission. Went through that process. So when that designation came aboard, and like I said, I'll try to find out the date, but my guess is it's within the last 5 to 7 years when that happened. And this property was designated C5 at that time. So, and I'll check, Mrs. Gash would be happy to check to see if that's when that happened, but my
We'll
thought.
find balance for those issues.
My thought is that's when that happened, so I'll look at that.
I would also like to mention that although the applicant was not at the planning commission meeting, he met with Laura Finch, the law director, and myself, and discussed this at length, and the request did come from him.
Okay, Lauren Sengstock again. Respectfully disagree with your law director. I think if he goes back to 1989, you will find that C5 zoning and a limited amount of regulations existed. This parcel of property is on your map in 1989 as C5. Your C5 mixed-use district didn't come along until a considerable number of years later, and therefore I just want the record to be clear. That needs to be verified, and if the law director can prove that, you need to substantiate that to council so you can have all the information backed and formed on this issue. Thank you.
I'd like to also make a point, Mr. Maestros, I think if you check that this ordinance 69 that sets the establishment for the regulations for the C5 district, the ordinance was clearly for establishing regulations. The ordinance was just to establish regulations, not to amend the map. Your resolution to the Board of Elections, however, was altered to include the map. So the ordinance did not provide for amending the map. It resolution said, and the map. And the map, just as some history, when ordinance 69 was passed, I know there were 6 parcels of land that were rezoned based upon a court order. Those were the annexed parcels that were ordered by the courts.
69, what was the year?
Ordinance 69,
What year?
2007 or 8.
Thank you.
Anyway, it was, and another point I want to make is, and you can find all this out, Ordinance 69 was establishing the regulations for the C5 district. We call that area. I was at a public hearing, and I said, what does Ordinance 69 mean? And you explained it to me. There were no parcels of land. There were no addresses of rezoning for 50 or 60 or 40 parcels. There were none. At the time, I questioned it in October before the election, and I was told, and it was, as a matter of fact, the bulletin even called me, and they said, are you aware? And I said, yes. And Mr. Maestros and Mr. Finch both confirmed that the ordinance was for the 6 parcels of land. And the comment is made that if you pass this ordinance and the 6 parcels of rezoning, you are establishing the map. You're certifying the map. If you recall, Mr. Maestros, that was the opinion, that if you approve the ordinance 69 and the 6 parcels that were ordered by the court, you are approving the map as proposed by the planning commission. It's only a proposal. As a matter of fact, I'll go a step further. I was even cautioned by one of the planning commissioners. You know, we haven't voted on this. We proposed it. And 3 weeks after we proposed it, council published a map with the zonings already there. So, I mean, that was a long time ago. I didn't make an issue of it because I thought, well, we'll work it out. It'll work itself out. But it's not working itself out. And what has to be here is procedures and rezonings and, you know, my complaints are just one of them. But if you get a disgruntled developer,
Ms.
and you'll
Gaydosh,
get one someday,
let me just ask you.
you'll get one.
We have currently a property that's in front of us with legislation. We're here for a public hearing. So that property is currently zoned C5. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
It's
Based
been-
upon the map.
It's been applied for and approved, recommended by planning commission, that it be put on a ballot for a change in zoning. Are we okay with that?
No, but yes, I'm okay with the whole thing. I have
Okay,
no
I guess-
objection. I don't know one with, my only concern
I just feel like that's why we're here tonight.
But you're
To
here
talk
based
about
upon
this parcel
map.
of land and to have a public hearing on this particular issue.
But you're using the base map we have supposedly adopted as your verification of the certified map. If it's a certified map, you say it's certified, do what you have to do. But I'm questioning whether or not it should be certified if it hasn't been adopted by vote. That's my only concern. Thanks.
At this time, I'm closing the public hearing. If anybody would like to speak at the